Hey everyone, it's Ron, and today I'm going to be giving my thoughts on a book series that I just recently got into, and that is of course Frank Herbert's legendary sci-fi series Dune. Dune is one of those books that I've heard about for years, so much so that I grabbed a copy of it years ago when I was at a Barnes & Noble. I originally went to grab Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep because I wanted to read the source material and inspiration for Blade Runner, and I saw Dune close by, so I thought I'd grab it. I've had this copy of Dune for years, and I just never finished it. To me, Dune is not only a slow burn as a work of science fiction, but it's also been a slow burn for me in my life as a fan of this genre. This was about 2014, and I think when I grabbed a copy, I honestly don't think I was ready for it. I couldn't get a grasp on this complex universe that Herbert created right away, and I put the book down after a couple chapters. I definitely think that it's a series you have to do research on before diving in, and I'm really glad I did that because it makes the reading experience way more enjoyable. Dune is interesting because while I was getting familiar with the lore of it, I couldn't avoid some spoilers. At first I was very frustrated because I thought I ruined the books for myself, but I soon realized that it only enhanced the experience. Suddenly I had way more knowledge of the world and I understood most of the vocabulary much better. I watched dozens of videos about it on YouTube and read all about the Mentats, the Fremen, the Bene Gesserits, and slowly became fascinated with this world. I think one of the things that turned me off about Dune initially was that it's a space epic that doesn't even have any aliens in it. At first I thought, oh man, how boring is that? Usually I like this type of stuff to have different alien races and space battles. I also didn't like that machines were basically outlawed in this future, because I also like to have a lot of futuristic tech in my sci-fi. As I got into the story more, I became fascinated by how the people of this universe work around that. The Mentats are interesting because they're human computers. This series takes place thousands of years in the future, and it makes me wonder if the human mind could train itself to be at the level of a computer. The Bene Gesserits are also intriguing because they have special abilities like the use of voice that lets them command people. As of this video, I'm only 3 books into the series, so one of the things I'm fascinated with the most is how things like the voice or human computers work in a realistic sci-fi universe. It's right on the cusp of mysticism, but I don't think it's supposed to be. One of the confusing things about the first book is the journal entries from Princess Irulan. This is one of the things that shows Frank Herbert was playing the long game, because when I first read it, I had no clue what Irulan was talking about. But now that I'm more familiar with the books, I can't wait to go back and read this first one again, especially for those future insights by the princess. The story opens up with the main protagonist of the story, Paul Atreides, on his homeworld of Caladan. His mother, the Lady Jessica, who is also part of the Bene Gesserit sisterhood, brings her reverend mother in to see Paul and give him the Gom Jabbar test. This is an interesting and tense opening to the book. The Gom Jabbar is a painful test of the mind. The reverend brings in a box that Paul has to put his hand in. She also has a needle on her index finger pointed at Paul's neck. Paul has to keep his hand in the box even though it feels like the skin on his hand is peeling off. He passes the test, but we soon learn that Jessica went against the sisterhood and had a boy even though she was supposed to give birth to a girl. The sisterhood wanted to create the Kwisatz Haderach, which is a being with a level of prescience that allows them to see the future. I can definitely see where a series like Game of Thrones was inspired by Dune, because in the beginning, House Atreides, which consists of Lady Jessica, the Duke Leto, and Paul, moved to the desert planet Arrakis, which is currently run by their rivals, the Harkonnens. The planet Arrakis is so important to the universe because it's the only planet that has the spice melange, which is a geriatric spice that allows space travel, and it even allows people to extend their lives. Duke Leto knows that this is a trap, but goes along with it anyway, thinking he has the advantage of knowing the dangers going into it. The whole plan was devised by the Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV. He feels his throne is being threatened by the charismatic Duke Leto. Shaddam's ally in this is the main villain of this book, the Baron Harkonnen. He's a great villain. He's scary, repulsive, but also very smart. I've seen the David Lynch version and the sci-fi adaptation, and I think they both dropped the ball on the Baron. I really hope the new film has a great depiction of him. I can't wait to see what he looks like, and I have a feeling it's going to be way better than the last two. He needs to actually be intimidating instead of just a wacky villain. So once the Atreides get to the planet Arrakis, they immediately have their weapons master, Gurney Halleck, check their new home for any death traps. He does a good job, but somehow a device called a Hunter-Seeker slips by him and makes its way into Paul's room, with him narrowly escaping his death thanks to his training. Duke Leto is obviously furious that someone tried to take the life of his son, and Gurney is also disappointed in himself, which shows just how loyal he is to the Atreides family. I don't really want to make this just a recap because I want to review the story, but man, this book is so dense and there are so many characters that it's hard not to start down that path. So let's back up and compare the mentats of the opposing houses. On the Atreides side of things, you have Thufir Hawat, who actually ends up being captured and slowly poisoned by the Baron. The Baron also has a twisted mentat called Piter de Vries, who I also can't wait to see in the movie because he's being played by that creepy guy from Prisoners and a bunch of other stuff. I think he's perfect for the role. Another important character for this portion of the book, even though it's a small role, is Dr. Yueh, who has a deep hatred for the Harkonnens because they took his wife. Jessica suspects something's wrong with him, but once she learns his backstory, she doesn't think he would ever be capable of betraying them. Her gut feeling fails her, and during an attack by the Harkonnens, Yueh takes Leto down and tells him that this is his chance to get revenge on the Baron. He gives Leto a fake tooth and instructs him to bite down on it when he's close to the Baron. This will send a poisonous gas to shoot out and kill anyone close. Leto eventually tries this when he's captured, but only succeeds in killing Piter and himself. During the attack, Paul and Jessica were taken away by Ornithopter, and they managed to escape with Paul taking his first life. They both wind up stranded in the desert, and this is where we get a large portion of the book dealing with Paul and Jessica meeting the Fremen and learning their ways. We meet Stilgar, who's the leader of this Fremen tribe that takes them in and is sort of a mentor to Paul. A lot of this section also gets more into the head of Lady Jessica, who slowly starts to see her son change and is taken aback by what she has created. Paul's first trial is combat with one of the Fremen who calls him out named Jamis. Paul ends up winning the battle, and Jessica doesn't want him to feel good about killing another man. Paul isn't, and he even weeps for Jamis, which the rest of the Fremen are shocked by. Paul also meets a girl named Cheney, who he ends up falling in love with. While all of this is going on, the Baron is getting reports that the Fremen are more of a danger to the Harkonnens and the Sardaukar soldiers, who are with the Emperor Shaddam of House Corrina. The Baron has two nephews, Feyd-Rautha and the Beast Rabban. The Beast has been fighting the war on Arrakis, and Feyd is trying to scheme his way to being the new leader of the Harkonnens, even going as far as trying to assassinate the Baron himself. One of my favorite parts of this book is when Paul has to ride a sandworm, basically as a final test of the Fremen. It's really exciting, and the scale of the worms is presented really well by Herbert. Shortly after this, Paul is reunited with his old friend Gurney after a Fremen attack. It's a cool moment because it feels like so much time has passed in the story. Now allied with Stilgar, Gurney, and the rest of the Fremen who now call him Muad'Dib, Paul sets out to overthrow the Padishah Emperor who arrives on Arrakis with the Harkonnens. Just to back up for a sec, with another important section, Lady Jessica meets with the Fremen Reverend Mother and drinks the Water of Life, which basically kills the old Reverend and transfers her memories over to the Lady Jessica. What this Reverend Mother doesn't know is that Jessica is pregnant and you're not supposed to drink this poison while you're with child. This creates a preborn child named Alia. This is a fascinating concept because Alia is born into the world with the knowledge of all her ancestors and all of the previous Bene Gesserits. Even though she is a child, she is more experienced and has lived more lives than anyone else, and it freaks out the Fremen to see a small kid speaking as a wise adult. To me, this is one of the coolest concepts of Dune, and Herbert takes it to an even bigger level in the next couple novels. So what Lady Jessica basically did is a huge no-no, and it's looked down upon in the Sisterhood. When the Emperor and the Baron arrive on Arrakis, Alia lets herself get captured, and we see the return of Gaius Helen Mahim, who is the Reverend Mother who gives Paul the Gom Jabbar test in the beginning of the novel. She sees Alia and immediately knows what's up, calling her Abomination. Alia ends up using the Gom Jabbar on the Baron, killing him and making way for Paul to enter after his full assault on Arrakeen. Paul strips the Emperor of his title, takes his daughter Irulan as his wife, and also fights and kills Fade, who challenges him to a fight. Paul does all of this with his real wife, Chani, by his side, and he takes complete power because he has control of the spice. The book has a bit of an abrupt ending, with Paul in total victory. He gets revenge for his father, and in some sense, it's a happy, satisfying conclusion. The benefit of doing some research on this whole series is not being disappointed in the fact that Paul is not supposed to be this heroic leader throughout the series. The book is very much about the rise of a heroic leader, which Frank Herbert would describe as a charismatic leader. This book is just one small part of a larger series that explores the dangers of having a charismatic leader and the horrors that brings to the universe. I feel like if you go into this series knowing that, it's a lot more enjoyable and makes much more sense. Obviously, I missed a lot of intricacies because there are so many characters and so much lore, but I wanted to do an overview of this book and tell you guys my general thoughts. I absolutely love the scope of this whole novel. It takes you on an epic journey, and I don't know if I can say that this is something everyone will enjoy, but it does manage to mix escapism, entertainment, politics, religion, ecology, philosophy, all in one book, and that's not an easy thing to do. Paul is a character that I could tell was a ticking time bomb, and might not turn out to be the good guy that I thought he was going to be, especially with what I know from the next two books. But I also couldn't help rooting for him in this book, and Dune Messiah as well, which I'd like to go through in another video, because I heard that was one of the weakest books in the series, and I actually ended up really enjoying it as well. So there's my first review of the Dune series. It's a great book, and I highly recommend it to anyone who was originally on the fence about it. It didn't hit me right away, but as soon as I was finished with it, I wanted to go back and do a reread, which never happens with me. Thanks for watching this long. Please make sure to like and subscribe if you're into this type of content, and I'll talk to you later. Take care.